You know that moment around 3 a.m. when your sleep suddenly breaks, the room is silent, and you find yourself staring at the ceiling wondering why your blood sugar still seems to be doing its own thing. Even though you've followed every rule all day, maybe your reading before bed looked fine. Yet something inside still feels off, and then morning comes with that quiet fear that the first number might ruin your entire day before it even begins. I've sat with countless people in their 60s and 70s who all say the same thing in a low voice: I'm doing everything right. But my body just won't listen anymore. But what if the problem isn't your medication? Or your diet? What if the real answer isn't hidden in another strict plan but in something incredibly simple you already do every single day? Just at the wrong time. Water. Yes, plain water. But the way and timing it enters your body, especially during those quiet hours of night and early morning, can silently shift how your blood sugar behaves. Far more than most people ever realize. Stay with me until the end. Because what you're about to discover might finally help your body understand a language it hasn't responded to in a long time. There is a pattern I've watched over and over again in older adults with type 2 diabetes. The meals are careful, the medications are taken faithfully, the desserts are rare, the walks are real and still. The numbers can feel moody, especially first thing in the morning, after dinner, or on days when energy just disappears for no obvious reason. What makes this so frustrating is that people start blaming themselves. They think they slipped somewhere, they think they failed, but very often that isn't the truth. Very often, the body is giving clues that have nothing to do with willpower and everything to do with timing, circulation, sleep, stress hormones, and hydration that simply isn't landing where and when the body needs it most. That is why I want to walk you through a simple framework I use when I explain this to older adults. I call it the quiet water rhythm, not because it is dramatic, because it works quietly in the background where blood sugar problems often begin. It has 4 parts you can remember easily. First, wake the body gently. Second, space water instead of chasing it. Third, use meals as anchors. And fourth, protect sleep while still staying hydrated. It sounds simple because it is simple, but here's what most people don't realize. Simple and weak are not the same thing. Let's begin with the first hidden problem, because this is where so many mornings are lost before breakfast even begins. Have you ever gone all night without drinking, gotten up, made coffee, checked your phone, maybe checked your glucose, and only had plain water much later? That stretch matters more than people think. During sleep, you continue losing water through breathing, through the skin, and through normal overnight urination. Then morning arrives, and your body is already under a quiet strain. In older adults, thirst signals are often less reliable, so you may not feel dry even when you are already behind. Now add what naturally happens around dawn. Cortisol rises in the early morning. That is normal. It helps wake you up, but cortisol also tells the liver to release more glucose into the bloodstream. If you are already underhydrated, that glucose is circulating in a more concentrated system, and the number on the meter can look worse than expected. This is one reason some people feel like their body betrays them before they have even had breakfast. The surprising part is that morning dehydration does not just affect blood sugar. It can also worsen dizziness, make blood pressure medications feel stronger than expected, and leave you foggy, irritable, or shaky. In a way that is easy to misread, one problem begins leaning into another. The tired body moves less. The less you move, the harder glucose disposal becomes. And this is where things change, because once you understand the chain reaction, you stop treating the morning number like a mystery. I remember a man in his early 70s who told me almost apologetically that he was afraid to check his fasting glucose because it felt like a judgment waiting for him every morning. He ate the same breakfast most days. He barely touched sweets, but his readings jumped around enough to make him dread the start of the day. When we went through his routine slowly, he was sleeping 7 hours, waking up, making coffee immediately, and not drinking plain water until nearly an hour later. That one detail had been hiding. In plain sight, we changed nothing about his medication that week. We simply had him drink about 12 to 16 ounces of room temperature water within 10 minutes of waking, before coffee, before breakfast, before anything else. 2 weeks later, his fasting readings were not perfect, but they were steadier, and his mornings felt less punishing. More importantly, he stopped feeling ambushed by his own body. So here is the first action. Tomorrow morning, before coffee and before breakfast, drink 12 to 16 ounces of room temperature or slightly warm water over 5 to 10 minutes. Not ice cold, not chugged into seconds. Just a calm first signal to the body that the night is over and support has arrived. Now let me show you the second hidden problem, because many people try to hydrate, but the way they do it never truly reaches the places that matter. Do you ever realize at noon that you've barely had anything to drink, then suddenly gulp a large bottle of water to catch up? That is incredibly common. It also does not work as well as people hope. The body handles steady intake better than long dry spells followed by a flood. When water arrives all at once after hours of underdrinking, some of it helps, of course, but a lot of people end up running to the bathroom and assuming they are well hydrated when, in reality, their tissues and circulation have been playing catch-up all day. This matters for blood sugar because your bloodstream is where glucose is traveling. If fluid balance swings from too little to too much and back again, your numbers can feel more erratic, and your energy often follows the same pattern. People describe this as feeling wiped out after lunch, wired at night, and somehow still thirsty in between. That rhythm is not random. It is often a sign that hydration has become reactive instead of steady. There is also a quiet emotional cost to this. Many older adults intentionally avoid drinking because they are trying to avoid the bathroom, especially if they already deal with urgency, incontinence, or fear of getting stuck out of the house without quick access to a restroom. I understand that, it is real, but when drinking gets pushed later and later, two problems appear. Daytime dehydration gets worse, and then evening drinking goes up, which can break sleep with repeated nighttime urination. Broken sleep then raises stress, worsens insulin resistance the next day, and leaves appetite less stable. Again, one issue makes the next one harder. I had a woman once tell me, very quietly, that she had started planning her day around bathrooms, not around health. She was drinking too little in the morning and afternoon, then sipping large amounts after dinner because that was when she finally felt safe at home. She was exhausted, waking 2 or 3 times a night, and her fasting sugars were creeping higher. What helped her was not drinking less overall. It was moving most of her fluids earlier in the day. Within 3 weeks, her sleep was less broken, her morning readings were less jumpy, and the fear that had been controlling her routine started to loosen. So here is the second action. Instead of trying to catch up, divide your daytime water into smaller anchors. Aim for about 8 to 12 ounces mid-morning, another 8 to 12 ounces with the early afternoon, and another 8 to 12 ounces by late afternoon, adjusting for your size, climate, and activity. Sip, do not flood. If carrying a bottle helps, use one. If using a marked glass helps, use that. The method matters less than the rhythm. The third hidden problem surprises people, because many think they are drinking responsibly when in fact the drink itself is quietly changing the game. Have you ever said to yourself, I drink plenty? And then realized most of it is coffee, sweet tea, juice, sports drinks, or those flavored bottles that sound healthy but still carry sugar or sodium you did not account for. This is where a lot of confusion lies. Let's make it simple. Water is still the cleanest default for blood sugar support. Coffee and tea can contribute to fluid intake in moderation, and for many people the fluid in them still counts. But if your day is built mostly around caffeinated drinks, sweetened drinks, or large evening beverages, the result may not feel the way true hydration feels. Sweet drinks can raise blood sugar directly. Highly flavored wellness drinks can create the illusion of doing something healthy while quietly adding sugar, and even drinks labeled low sugar can train your taste back towards sweetness all day. Large caffeinated drinks late in the day can also keep sleep lighter, and poor sleep changes what happens to blood sugar the next morning. This is why I never look at hydration and diabetes as two separate conversations. They are tied together through sleep, through stress hormones, and through the choices that fill your glass without you thinking much about it. And here's something else worth knowing. As people age, they often lose some of their natural appetite for plain water. Taste changes. Some medications affect the mouth. Some people simply say water feels boring. I do not dismiss that. If plain water feels difficult, small changes can help. A slice of lemon, cucumber, or a few berries for flavor can make it easier without turning it into dessert. What matters is that the drink still behaves like water in the body, not like a treat that spikes and slides you. A retired school principal once told me he was sure he was hydrated because he drank liquids from morning to night. When we actually listed them, it was coffee, juice, sweetened tea, and one small glass of water with pills. He laughed when he saw it written down, then got emotional a few seconds later because he realized he had been trying hard, just in the wrong direction. We shifted him to one morning coffee after water, unsweetened tea in the early afternoon if he wanted it, and plain water as the main drink at meals. He came back saying the biggest surprise was not just better readings after dinner. It was that his head felt clearer by late afternoon, and the heavy slump he thought was just aging had softened. So here is the third action. For the next 14 days, make plain water your main drink. Keep coffee or tea if you tolerate them well, but do not let them replace water, and move most caffeine earlier in the day. If you need flavor, add something simple and unsweetened, not something that quietly turns hydration into another glucose. Problem. Now we come to the fourth hidden problem, and this one shows up around meals more often than people expect. Have you ever noticed that some meals seem to sit fine, while others lead to a heavier, sleepier, thirstier feeling afterward, even when the food did not seem outrageous? Part of this can be the meal itself, of course, but part of it is the condition your body was already in before you started eating. If you come to a meal underhydrated, digestion, circulation, and glucose handling can feel rougher. The body is being asked to process food at a time when it is already behind. This does not mean you need to drown your meal in water. In fact, huge volumes all at once are not the goal. The goal is preparation. A modest glass of water before meals can help create a more stable starting point. For many people, about 8 to 10 ounces 15 to 20 minutes before lunch and dinner is a practical sweet spot. It is enough to support the system without leaving you uncomfortable. This is also where temperature can matter for comfort. Room temperature water tends to be gentler for many older adults, especially in the morning and around meals. Ice-cold drinks are not dangerous for everyone, but some people notice more stomach discomfort, bloating, or a rushed feeling when they drink very cold fluids too quickly. The best hydration strategy is not the one that sounds impressive. It is the one you will actually stick to. Let me pause here for a moment and say something personal. After all these years, the part that stays with me is not the lab report. It is the look on someone's face when they have been trying so hard and genuinely believe they are the problem. I never forget that look, and I wish more people understood that a body under pressure does not need shame. It needs better support, given consistently enough for the body to trust it. Back to meals, because here is where many viewers tell me they notice the first real difference, when water starts arriving before the meal instead of long after. Post-meal heaviness often feels less intense. Energy may be steadier. Some people see less of a rise after dinner, not because water is a magic trick, because the body is not starting the meal already strained. There was a woman in her late 60s who used to say dinner was the meal she feared most, not because she overate. Because no matter how sensible she was, her numbers after dinner often made her anxious. She was also constipated, tired, and moving less because she simply did not feel good by evening. That is another connection people overlook. When hydration is poor, constipation becomes more likely. When constipation worsens, people feel heavier, less active, and less willing to walk after meals. Less movement after meals can make glucose control harder. One quiet problem becomes 3. We gave her one simple experiment, about 20 minutes before lunch and again before dinner. She drank a modest glass of water and took a 10-minute walk after the meal whenever she could. Nothing heroic, nothing fancy. A few weeks later, she told me dinner no longer felt like the point in the day where everything unraveled. Her bowels were more regular, her after-dinner walk felt easier, and her evening numbers stopped scaring her in the same way. So here is the fourth action, 15 to 20 minutes before lunch and dinner. Drink 8 to 10 ounces of water. Then, if you are able, walk for 10 minutes after the meal at an easy pace. That combination is simple, realistic, and often more powerful than people expect. Now for the fifth hidden problem, because this is the one that often ruins good intentions. People here drink more water, and they accidentally make the evening harder. Do you drink most of your water late in the day because that's finally when you remember? If so, you are not alone, but this can backfire badly, especially after 50, 60, or 70. Flooding the evening with fluids can mean more trips to the bathroom, lighter sleep, more frustration, and a rougher morning, and sleep is not a side issue in diabetes. When sleep breaks apart, the next day's blood sugar control often becomes harder, appetite can feel stronger, cravings can feel louder, blood pressure can be less stable, mood can sink. Once again, one system spills into the next. This is why the final part of the quiet water rhythm is not drink as much as possible. It is drink early enough to help, gently enough to absorb, and lightly enough at night to protect sleep. For many people, that means most fluids happen before late evening. Then the final hours before bed become more selective and more intentional. Now, I am not telling you to go to bed dry. That can also feel miserable. The goal is balance. If your mouth is dry or you take medications that make you thirsty, a small amount of water in the evening may be completely reasonable. But large glasses close to bedtime are often the hidden reason sleep keeps breaking. And when people fix that timing, they are shocked by what improves. Not just bathroom trips, morning energy, mood, fasting numbers. The whole next day can start from a different place. A gentleman in his 70s once told me he thought waking 3 times a night was simply his new normal. He was drinking most of his water after dinner because he was busy during the day and trying not to use public restrooms. His sleep was shattered. His morning readings were drifting upward. He also felt unsteady when he first stood up in the morning. We moved most of his fluids to earlier blocks of the day and had him taper in the last 2 to 3 hours before bed. Within 10 days, he was waking less often, and he said the house felt different in the morning, quieter, less tense. He did not realize how much nighttime interruption had been shaping everything else. So here is the 5th action. Try to get the majority of your fluids in by the late afternoon or early evening. Then, in the 2 to 3 hours before bed, keep intake lighter and more purposeful, enough for comfort if needed, but not enough to keep waking your bladder all night. At this point, you may be wondering how much water is actually right. That is a fair question, and the honest answer is that it depends. Body size, weather, activity, medications, kidney function, heart function, and even how much you sweat all matter. General daily fluid guidance for older adults often lands around roughly 11.5 cups for women and 15.5 cups for men from all fluids, but that includes more than plain water, and it is not a one-size-fits-all prescription. Some people need less, some need more. If you have heart failure, advanced kidney disease, or you have been told to limit fluids, your plan must come from your own clinician. For everyone else, I prefer a more practical test. Look at your pattern, not just your total. Are you waking dry, crashing in the afternoon, constipated, or relying on late evening catch-up drinking? Is your urine often dark yellow instead of pale straw? Are you thirsty only after you are already tired? Those clues matter. They tell you how your current rhythm is working in real life. So let me give you a simple named routine you can begin immediately. I call it the sunrise to supper water rhythm. When you wake up, within 10 minutes, drink 12 to 16 ounces of room temperature water. About 90 minutes later, or by mid-morning, drink another 8 to 10 ounces. 15 to 20 minutes before lunch, drink 8 to 10 ounces. In the early afternoon, especially if you take a walk or feel the usual slump, drink another 8 to 12 ounces. 15 to 20 minutes before dinner, drink 8 to 10 ounces. Then ease off in the last 2 to 3 hours before bed. Sip only as needed for comfort instead of treating the evening like your main hydration window. If you exercise, garden, spend time in the heat, or simply have a more physically active day, add more water earlier, not all at once at night. And here are the 3 mistakes I want you to stop making starting today, waiting until thirst becomes obvious, trying to catch up with huge amounts all at once, and letting coffee, sweet drinks, or late evening fluids do the job water should have done earlier. But here's what most people don't realize. The goal is not perfection. The goal is predictability. Your body loves a rhythm it can count on. When water comes in consistently, the body does not have to keep shifting into recovery mode. That alone can change how steady you feel. I want to challenge you now. Try this for 14 days. Not forever. Not as a promise. Just 14 honest days. Keep your medication the same unless your own doctor tells you otherwise. Keep your usual meals as consistent as you can, but change the water rhythm. Drink earlier. Space it out. Anchor it around waking and meals. Protect sleep at night. Then watch what happens to your morning number, your afternoon energy, your digestion, and your sleep. If you do this challenge, write down 3 things every day: your fasting blood sugar, how many times you woke up at night, and 1 sentence about how you felt by late afternoon. That is enough to start seeing patterns. The numbers matter, but so does the lived experience of your own body. Sometimes the first sign that a routine is working is not the meter, it is that you feel more like yourself again. And if this message found you at the exact moment you were starting to believe nothing simple could still help, let this be your reminder that the basics are not small when they are done at the right time. Sometimes the body is not refusing to cooperate. Sometimes it is waiting for a steadier signal. If you're willing to do the 14-day challenge, tell me in the comments, "I'm starting today." And if you've been struggling with morning numbers, nighttime waking, or that exhausted afternoon drop, share that too, because someone reading your words may realize they are not the only one fighting this quiet battle. If you know a parent, spouse, sibling, or friend who keeps saying, "I'm doing everything right and still not getting the numbers I want," send this to them. It may be the first time the missing piece sounds simple enough to try and sensible enough to trust. And one last thing before we finish. This is general health education, not personal medical care. If you have kidney disease, heart failure, take diuretics, or your doctor has given you fluid restrictions, speak with your own clinician before making changes to your intake. And if your sugars are running very high, you feel ill, weak, confused, or unusually thirsty, do not wait on a video. Please contact your doctor because your care should be tailored to you.